Hi everyone, this is Elena of The Witch's Box, and we're here today with another episode of Witch BookTube Review, and we're going to be talking about Hoodoo, Honey, and Sugar Spells by Deacon Millett. I'm using a different camera today, so if you see that my eyes are lost, I'm trying to find where the camera is. I also want to say, before I get into the book, there is a ton of chaos going on outside this room. There's a lot of excited dogs, there's someone cleaning a house, and I'm not in a familiar to me environment in terms of working. I mean, I've been to this is our friend's house. We're on the road right now. We're gonna roll with it, man. We're just gonna roll, and we're gonna just try to breathe some peace into the situation. Boom, here's the book. And I want to really quickly read for all of you the bio. The author's name is Deacon Millett, and Deacon Millett is the pastor at Four Altars Gospel Sanctuary, the second church to join the Association of Independent Spiritual Churches. Here he leads a powerful and personal candle ministry as well as performing root work for his clients worldwide. He is the author of 2 acclaimed books on love magic, Hoodoo, Honey, and Sugar Spells, and Hoodoo, Return, and Reconciliation Spells, and has presented classes on sweetening and love work at the annual Hoodoo Heritage Festival Workshop in Forestville, California. I will link to this stuff below because in this review, and actually even now reading this bio, some interesting stuff is coming up in terms of resources for all of you, so I will link all of that below. And this Heritage Festival is one of those things. Deacon is a sought-after card reader and personal counselor and makes himself available for callbacks on Hoodoo Psychics, a phone network for readers trained in African American folk magic. A frequent guest on the Lucky Mojo Hoodoo Rootwork Hour, Deacon Millett has earned high praise from his colleagues at AIRR, which stands for the Association of Independent Readers and Rootworkers, where he currently serves as an ombudsman. This book came recommended to me, and it also comes recommended to me, but also there have been questions that have come through Instagram DMs, through Facebook, through email, about different things regarding Hoodoo and rootwork and conjure that I actually didn't have answers to, but this book does, and I wanted to share those things with you because I think that it's important for us to understand the cultural context for the magical lineages and traditions out there. We live in a time where everything is available anytime, anywhere, with a click of a button on the computer. And a lot of us walk a path where we have learned different things from different traditions and created something that is our own. But sometimes in doing that, we become insensitive to the fact that these are living traditions based and rooted in a specific cultural context that is not of our own, right? And then we run a risk of appropriation in a way that is oppressive to others. So in that sense, I think it's important to understand the origin story of a tradition, and this brings that to the fore. I'm going to read what Hoodoo, conjure, and rootwork is. A lot of you like to look at the inside of the book. This is like, I have to read all of this to everyone because this is important. So I'm going to read it to you. Hoodoo, also called conjure and rootwork, is an African-American folk magic tradition born in the crucible of American slavery, where ancient African magic met and merged with Protestant Christianity, Native American herbal lore, and a dash of European customs. In the Hoodoo tradition, we see several overarching practices. The first is sympathetic magic. So a hair from your head is a part of you, and what is done to a part will affect the whole. Next is the doctrine of signatures, a correspondence between the look, name, or attributes of an herb or object that help define its magical use. We see this, and we usually talk about this, at least the Witch's Box, and a lot of websites online where we talk about the magical correspondences for herbs and things like that. In the Hoodoo tradition, it's called the doctrine of signatures. So thus, lodestones, which are attracted to each other, promote attraction between people. Last, there is a call to the spirit world, to ancestors, deities, and the dead. Their aid can help in our endeavors. After the Civil War, Hoodoo traveled northward, assimilating Asian, Jewish, and spiritualist ideas, adding seals, grimoires, and lucky perfumes. By the 20th century, Hoodoo goods were sold by mail order across the USA. Hoodoo is a uniquely American creation like jazz or comic books, in which a fusion of traditions comes together as something greater than the whole, and it continues to grow. When glass-encased candles came into use in the 1970s, root workers quickly added them to their repertoire. If it works and if it makes sense, then Hoodoo workers will likely take a look at it. I love that. I loved learning what the context was. I did not know that history. I did know that there was an amalgamation of African magical traditions with Christianity, which always confused me. And a lot of the questions that I've gotten were about that, where it's like, why do some hoodoo spells require you to read one of the Psalms out of the Bible? What does that mean? I don't understand. Does that mean that they're Christians? Can Christians do this kind of, like, all these confusing questions about what's happening here? This is not what I thought magic or witchcraft was. But this points to the idea and the reality that we all need to be educated about, that magic comes in many forms. Magical traditions come from very many different places. One thing is not the other. And the more we understand where these lineages come, the more sensitive we can be to the fact that there is different cultural context for all of these different traditional forms of magic or witchcraft, right? So here we learn that this is specifically an African American magical tradition. And it's important to note too that he says here, hoodoo is not a religion. It is definitely not voodoo, a West African religion with offshoots in Haiti, Puerto Rico, Brazil, or Cuba. This is important to me personally because there are things that I do that I learned from my father, who was born in Cuba and came to the United States during the Revolution, who was a santero. He practiced santeria. And I learned and picked up a lot of what I do now from him. And some of those things that he did are not really part of santeria, which is interesting. I thought that it was, but it's actually part of hoodoo. So it brought up questions for me, but it also gave me some clarity about where his own path led him through, right? In any case, that's a whole story for another day. One of the things that I want to say about this book, just as an offshoot, is that he is very deeply linked with luckymojo.com, because his teacher, who I think was his teacher or still is his teacher, by the name of Catherine, and I don't know how to say this last name, Uranwode. I don't think I'm saying her name right, but she's a leader of this. It's unclear if it's a community, a store, a publishing house, but at the end of most of the pages, when he's talking about something, he will give you a link to where you can get much more information on the topic. So I really appreciate that. And I will link that below because the website is luckymojo.com. And if you go to luckymojo.com, you will get a much deeper description of the history of hoodoo, which I think is great. I love this book because of the history. I love this book because of the way that it approached magic. I love this book because it's simple. I read it all in one sitting. It gave me ideas around the kind of magic that I do with sugar and honey, which I think are very powerful tools for spells. But it gave me history that I really appreciated. So one of the things that he covers here, and this is a small book, you guys, like it took me 3 hours to read it, and only 3 hours because I was interrupted by a bunch of things and I had, it's a quick read, and yet it's chock full with a lot of information. So it flowed really well. I like that. The history. He goes into the history. There is someone called Harry Middleton Hyatt, and he was an Anglican minister and folklore collector. He is one of the reasons why there is such a powerful documentation of hoodoo practices today, because his recordings of the spiritual and magical beliefs of African Americans resulted in a 5-volume compendium called Hoodoo, Conjuration, Witchcraft, and Root Work. I will link to that below if I can find it. So a lot of the spells in this book, Harry Middleton Hyatt received in these interviews. So I'm going to read to you some of these, samples of some of these spells, because they're very practical and I loved them. Every spell here involves sugar or honey, straight up. So it's a honey jar, a sugar jar, really practical love spells in many, many forms. There are simple hoodoo sugar scrubs for your home, a sugar scrub for multiracial couples, a sugar bath for seduction, a sugar bath to sweeten dreams, a blue water bath for success. There's one that was really funny I wanted to share. There's a New Orleans fish fry sidewalk scrub, so that if you have a fish fry cart for the sidewalks of New Orleans, there is a spell for you. I love that. I thought that it was interesting to read. I thought that it was great to really get a feel for magic is about the practical, what you need, how do you bring what you need into your life. He talks a lot about the magical properties of different herbs that are common to use in hoodoo and root work, which would be herbs that are common for the United States specifically, because that's where the work was done. A few really great food recipes that are magical, which I thought was fantastic. So like there are love muffins with a rose glaze. There's Lucky Money marriage berries, honey cake to sweeten business associates. Love it. And it talks about why it works. I love it. I really did. And it was really easy, and it gives you a lot of ideas on how to work with your personal ingredients in your personal cultural context. But these books are great because they kind of shake us out of our routine and our habitual, like we do the same spell over and over and over again. But this gives you an idea of ways that you can alter them. But it also gives you context. It gives you history, which I thought was great. This book doesn't talk at all about ethics. It doesn't talk at all about whether it's okay or not to do love spells, whether it's okay or not to try to win someone back with a spell. These are the spells that have been created, that are used, and that have history. And I appreciated that because it's just the facts. I have been in my own personal way, just having some struggles around the way conversations move when it comes to quote unquote witchcraft ethics. I belong to maybe a handful of pagan groups or Wiccan groups or witchcraft groups that are non-denominational. I don't really like that word, but over on Facebook. And inevitably, usually, someone will say, listen, I need help. I need a spell for, I'm having a hard time with my boss. He's too hard on me. He's harassing me, whatever. Is there a spell, like a protection spell or a spell that I can do to ease him up so that he doesn't treat me this way? And rather than answer this person directly with a, yeah, I have a spell, or not answer the person because the person reading the thread does actually not have an answer, there's this crazy amount of pearl clutching around like, oh my God, you don't want to do anything about that because there's karma involved. Oh my God, power 3 times 3, or the rule of thirds, or whatever, that it comes back to you 3 times. It's like, listen, you guys, not everyone is Wiccan. Not everyone ascribes to those beliefs. By the way we're using karma, the word karma, the concept of karma is wrong. It's not about retribution. It's not about punishment. It's a whole other thing that we're missing the nuances of. And it gets really frustrating for me because there's this knee-jerk reaction that keeps happening over and over and over again. Oh, we don't do that. Well, maybe you don't, but someone else does. And if you don't have an answer for that person, then maybe just move on. So I'm a little frustrated with the way that conversation goes. I am not advocating for spells that are manipulative or oppressive to other people. That's not what I'm saying. I think that what I'm saying is that not everyone walks the same walk. And it can be really refreshing when a book just says, look, man, this is the spell, and you're an adult, and you can decide for yourself whether this is something that you want to do for yourself or not, but I'm certainly not going to pontificate on it here. I'm just going to give you the information. I appreciated that. And again, I have no idea if that was his intention or not, but again, nothing was said here about the ethics of any of it, but nothing felt nefarious in any way either. So I have charge around this. It's something that I have to explore a little bit more because I find myself having more and more of a reaction to the way these conversations and threads go. I feel like the reaction eliminates the space for conversation, where maybe if someone asks for a spell, there can be an actual dialogue about the energetics involved and, how to work the energetic around a situation in a way where maybe everyone benefits, or the person is just protected, or something that is of actual benefit. But people pearl clutching and saying, oh my God, don't do it. You're going to get like karmic retribution. How is that helpful, you guys? It's not helpful. And what this book reminded me of is that magic, whether it's derived from European magic, whether it's African magic, whether it's African-American Hoodoo work magic tradition, whatever, was created out of people who needed basic things and needed practical solutions. And sometimes magic was the only practical solution that they had. They created a spell to get the rain because their crops were dying. They got the spell to keep their kid from getting sick. They created a spell because their lover left them and they were heartbroken. Practical stuff, practical, real human stuff. I have feelings about it. Anyway, these are my thoughts this week. A bunch of different honey and sugar spells. How to use herbs around it. There are washes, there are baths, there are scrubs, there are honey and sugar jars. oils and oils to use, links galore to websites. And then at the end, because this website called luckymojo.com has a forum, and what he did was he created like basically an FAQ of the most commonly asked questions about honey jars or honey and sugar jars specifically. And so the last half of the book is a Q&A, basically what were the most common questions and the answers. And they're really quite helpful. And a lot of the questions that are in here actually are very similar to the questions that I get a lot. So I recommend the book because of the historical significance and how important it is to really understand what traditions are out there, because we are all intermingling now on the daily. And I think that that's fantastic. I think that the internet makes the world smaller in really great ways, but also in very challenging ways, because the more we educate ourselves, the more we understand where we fit in the larger context of all of these different traditions and lineages. So all that to say, I do recommend it. I thought it was really great. It's an easy read. And the website that I looked at is a little antiquated. I'm a little bit of a website snob, but it is chock full of a bunch of stuff. And somewhere in there, I'm going to try to find the website because he references it in the book. I'm going to try to find it on the website, but Catherine Uran-Wode. I'm sorry, Catherine, if you're ever out there and you see this, I just cannot spell, I don't know how to say your last name. She created a book that sounded pretty extensive on hoodoo rootwork spells that she actually puts out for free through the website, but I couldn't find it at a very quick glance. But if I do find it, I will link to that below as well. I would kick around in that website a little bit because you're going to probably find some interesting stuff if it's something that interests you. If it's not, it's not. So there it is. Hoodoo, Honey, and Sugar Spells. Easy read. Recommend it. It's great. Just if anything, just for the educational factor. And also, I love working with honey and sugar. It's the basis of the spells that I do for the Harvesting the Honey group that I have, which will open again later on this year because we have a small group and we're going to close out in a month and then another group will kick in later. But yeah, it's great. Small, easy read. Show you the inside. I'll link to it below if you want to buy it. All right, everyone. I will see you next week. I hope that you have a wonderful time throughout the next week and stay safe, be healthy, love, love, love. Bye.